In this video, we are going to cover another common issue you'll see with people overhead squatting, which is the anterior pelvic tilt. This causes a lot of lumbar extension. You see commonly people in this position, not in this position, but in this position with their butt out, and a lot of that lordosis in the lower back. Sarah's gonna come here for a second and demonstrate this. Now face the other way for us, and we're gonna get you to bring this up for 1 second. Your shirt up. Now, we have these fancy pants here that have a nice dark blue line. We're actually gonna show you exactly what the pelvis should look like. And as I explained in one of the earlier videos, is what we're gonna look for is your PSIS, which are those two bony processes right, can you feel that? So that's your PSIS right here. So this is going to go right on the keep this PG. So right where the PSIS, we're gonna follow the pelvis, and if you notice as I palpate right there where that ridge is, and that it's not hard anymore, that's where my back's to the camera, sorry, the ASIS is going to be. So now we've placed the pants in proper positioning. Now what I want you to notice from a side angle here is, let's go into our pelvic rotation. So other way, this is where you're gonna find a lot of people stuck in. Look at that angle now of her pelvis. So follow that blue line, or my hands. Now go into proper. Good. Tilt again forward, other way. So just watch the difference between this and this. This is where you want to be. Now let's look at this in terms of what's tight and what's causing this issue. So when we get into an anterior pelvic tilt, that is going to equal lumbar extension and hip flexion. So as soon as you go into this position, that's causing slight hip flexion and lumbar extension. Now let's look at the muscles responsible for doing that. So in terms of lumbar extension, the tightness is going to come from the erector spinae, coming right down the lower back, and also the lats. People might be thinking, what, the lats? These lats tie into the top of the pelvis. When these lats get tight, it will also pull right down here and rotate that pelvis. When we look at hip flexion, so anything that's going to shorten this is going to put you in hip flexion. The muscles responsible for that, psoas iliacus, our rectus fem, our TFL, and also our anterior adductors. This area here, so everything from here, flowing through here, is going to be tight. This is the side that we're going to need to release. So people coming in with that anterior pelvic tilt, and we saw this during your overhead squat. So even if she shifts like this, hands up over the head, go into your squat, automatically you're going to see that curvature. Come down lower. You're going to see that even more now. Look at what's happening with her pelvis in terms of how much forward it is now, and that excessive curvature in the lower back. You don't want to see this when people are squatting. Stand up for me. Again, when this is happening though, you might be thinking to yourself, why? What's going on? Now we can resort back to our list and you know what? How many people are sitting all day long? Do me a favor and have a seat here. Just have a seat on the edge. How many people are going to be in this position all day long? That's going to shorten all of this. And then suddenly, so imagine, stand up for 1 second. Lean over for me. Imagine me doing this and then trying to stand up. You're going to be really restricted. So in order for us to have that proper mobility through the hips, we got to make sure psoas, rectus fem, TFL, and our anterior adductors have been released, increase their mobility and flexibility. Now when we do that, again, step 4 and 5, we have to make sure that the opposite, the rectus abdominis, come back up here for a second. So if we look at this just from an anatomy perspective, going to your pelvic tilt, other way, when this happens, look what happens to the abs. Go the other way. These are in its normal length. Now you guys can really see, when I say this side here, everything's been lengthened, and because of that, they're underactive. Rotate. That elongates that muscle. And because of that, these don't fire, function, and produce force the way they're supposed to. So once we correct our issues, now we got to retrain the rectus abdominals, TVA, the transverse abdominals, and the obliques to control their core. Now that doesn't mean crunches, and we're gonna get this later on. Proper core control, proper core exercises to get this to engage. For the bottom portion, we got glute max, the hamstrings, and then the posterior adductors as well. Now, I've got a little note here saying don't stretch the hamstrings. And people are like, well, why not? Go into pelvic tilt for me. This causes the hamstrings to be lengthened so they appear or feel tight. What happens when she tilts back? Now they go back to their normal position. So once you correct this issue, strengthen the glutes, then you can activate the hamstrings, but don't in this position stretch the hamstrings. That's not going to solve the issue. We got to solve this first. Thank you, Sarah.